Hola, I'm Jorge Ramos.
And I'm Paula Ramos.
And this is The Moment. I'm really looking forward to the next interview here in Washington, D.C.
So we came to Washington, D.C. to talk to Karine Jean-Pierre. And so Karine Jean-Pierre was President Joe Biden's last press secretary. She's releasing a book this week that I think is going to be pretty controversial because her book is titled Independent, A Look Inside a Broken White House Outside the Party Lines. Now, it's controversial, I think, because this is someone that has worked for the Democratic Party her entire life. I mean, she's been a Democrat for 20 years. She worked for President Obama.
Now she's breaking with the party.
Now she's breaking with the party.
Yeah, so I'm interested because of other reasons. She was the first Black, the first immigrant, the first queer woman ever to represent the President of the United States as a spokesperson. And not only that, her job was precisely to answer the most difficult questions.
And here's a question that we want her to answer, so let's try and do that. We want to understand if being an independent is the way to defeat Trumpism in 2025.
Karine Jean-Pierre, when we come back.
So welcome to the moment.
Thank you. Oh, the moment. This is so perfect. We are living in a moment. So thank you so much for having me. Congratulations.
We were saying that in a few years from now, people will be asking us, what do you do during those years, no? And we have an answer with journalism, but I think you have an answer with your book.
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe 10 years ago, the answer was a Democratic Party for you, right? I mean, you essentially devoted so much of your career to that party. You worked in presidential campaigns. You worked for President Obama. Of course, you served as President Biden's press secretary. And here you are with a new book that's titled Independent, A Look Inside a Broken White House Outside the Party Lines.
Yeah.
The book essentially, it's fantastic. It's eye-opening.
Thank you. Oh, that means a lot. From coming from the both of you, that means a lot.
Very strong.
Thank you.
But I think it's eye-opening because you're essentially urging Americans and voters to question party lines and to even question their loyalty to the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
And perhaps what you're saying is that in and of itself helps us in this quest to fight for democracy. And so that's kind of where I want to start, understanding what inside this Biden White House and what about those 4 years in the Biden administration, how did that inform your decision to leave the Democratic Party and to do it in such a public way?
Yeah, so a couple of things. So this thought process of mine of becoming independent has been a long time coming, if you will. I think if you watch my career, you would say, oh, she's always been independent. I don't think you become the first of something or break a glass ceiling without having your own kind of independent way of thinking, your own compass, right? A lot of this is about your compass. Sure. And so it's been a long time coming. Obviously, in the book, I talk about a specific moment, those 3 weeks during the President Biden's debate to how we got to the nomination of 2024. And I was very disappointed by the way the party behaved, especially in a moment in a moment where everything was at stake. And what I mean by that is if you looked at what the other party was doing, they were behind their guy. However they saw him, they were behind a felon, someone who is accused of being a rape, all of the things. They all lined up behind him. Project 2025, they all lined up behind that. And we just couldn't get it together when people's lives were at risk, at stake. And look, the president's going to write his own book. He's going to talk about that moment in his way.
Will he?
Yes, he is. He's supposed to be writing a book. They've announced that, and I don't know what's going to be. President Biden, yes, President Biden, and I don't want to speak for him, obviously, in that regard. And for me, it was as one of the only people that was speaking during that time. I thought to myself, what is happening? Like we are in a real existential threat. What is happening right now? And then when he finally did decide, when he made his decision, and he decided he was going to hand over the reins, people within the party were wanting to make it difficult for her as a historic figure. Kamala Harris, probably should be more specific. Thank you so much. That's why you're a journalist. But, they were talking about brokered convention. They were talking about, we should really open this up. And I'm thinking to myself, no, we don't have a lot of time here. Like, we just don't. This is not the time. And so there were a lot of thought processes that obviously went to that space. And now you fast forward to January 21, 2025, and everywhere I was going, people were coming up to me, and there was a huge disappointment in the Democratic Party. There was a huge disappointment in the leadership. People were saying the Democratic Party had lost their soul. And my thinking then was, again, Project 2025, the Republican Party was very clear about what they were going to do. They're just taking it off. More than 40% of it is done. They weren't hiding it. So why wasn't the Democratic Party ready? Why? Why are they rubber stamping his nominees, Donald Trump's nominees? Why is that happening? Why? There's a protest that's happening this Saturday. Why is that the Democratic Party not holding protests? Why are we only hearing from outside groups?
So that's why you became independent.
That's why. Well, it's a long thinking process, but the reason I decided to write this book and the reason I've decided to be very clear about where I am and where I stand is because I wanted to start this conversation. Is because I felt as if I make this statement, then hopefully it opens up a space to have a conversation about the party. We need a two-party system in order for democracy to function. That is correct. And I'm not saying I want to form a third party. I am saying, and it's very, very nuanced, and I try to lay it out in the book, I am saying that we need to be independent voices and question and push people who are powerful.
But is this the right time to be independent, to tell your story? Because some people might think, by doing that, you're dividing the party more than ever.
And I love
when it
that
needs
question.
to be united.
Look, I love that question. But when is the time? So when is the time to do it? There's never going to be a right time. And I actually truly believe when you're in a situation like this, it is important, especially when you're the party that's out of power, to start reimagining, rethinking how we move forward as a country. And what is happening is the people who have the power, Democratic leadership, who have the power, are acting and behaving as if they don't have power. When people are questioning democracy and are skeptical about democracy, that's dangerous. Because in order to have it, you need to be practicing it every single day.
So this is the right time for you to tell the story.
I just think,
even if the party might hurt by doing that.
Jorge, I don't think the party will hurt. I don't see it in that negative
you're
light.
criticizing the party. You're saying that the Democratic Party didn't work.
But this is a democracy. This is a democracy. And by the way, I'm a private citizen. I'm a private citizen right now, right? So I know we're headed to an authoritarian regime here, but I have the right as a private citizen to be critical. I have a right as a private citizen to question authority. That is one of the reasons both of my parents are from Haiti. They grew up in a dictatorship. That's the reason they came to this country, in the hopes so that their kids could have a voice. So that is like my given right as a citizen of this country to criticize. And you
could have done it from within when you were part of the party. Maybe that's the question. Why didn't you do it?
No, look, when I was part of the party, I was speaking for the president and for the party, right? And so I was doing the job that I committed to and believed was important. I believed in what the Biden administration was doing. When I talk about the broken White House, I'm talking about the current White House. I'm talking about what we're seeing in this moment from the Trump administration. And so I guess the criticism about, you're divided. I'm one person. An important one, a powerful one. I agree. I appreciate that. I don't agree. I appreciate that. I appreciate that statement. But then that's why I think, why not use my power or my platform to have a difficult conversation?
So at this point, it's not a given that come 2028, you will vote for a Democratic candidate. Today, would you say your vote is up for debate?
Well, what I'm saying is there's no way on this planet that I would vote for a Republican right now. The Republican Party does not represent me at all, not to an iota, especially if you're talking about Project 2025, which they're clearly all behind. What I am saying is I want to make sure that my voice is counted. You all know this. When it comes to the final like 30 days, 60 days of an election, who do the candidates go after? They go after independent voters. They believe that their base is already solidified, which in many ways it is true. They look for independent voters and they literally rush and do everything that they can to make sure that they come out and vote. And you all know this too. Fact. Millions of people decided not to participate in 2024. People who voted in 2024.
They stayed home. Yeah.
They stayed home. There is a fundamental problem here that we need to address. That's why when you were asking me, Jorge, well, why now? Why not now? Something is broken. Millions of people stayed home, did not come to vote. Now, there are probably multiple various factors, the economy, I'm sure there are many, many factors for them personally, but we didn't reach them. And I take accountability too, right? I think what happened in 2024, we all have to take accountability for what happened. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's important to understand how you get to this point.
Yeah.
And a little bit of your thought process. And I think for many people, right, I think the beginning of the end was that presidential debate between President Biden and Donald Trump, right? That's when people
June
really...
27.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember. Right. Well, I think it's... Okay, so you remember, but I think you have a very different perception from what many of us saw. You describe President Biden's debate on that stage against Donald Trump, and I'll quote you. You say that his performance was a faltering performance, and I think many of us saw a catastrophic performance.
Yeah.
Because I'm just curious, what did you see that we didn't see?
Yeah, so a couple things. And he will say that it was not a great debate. I think he actually used a curse word when he was on a show not too long ago this past spring on how he thought about his.
What did he say when he was coming out of the stage?
So he explained it himself when he was on The View, and I think the first person that he saw was Dr. Biden, and I think he used an F word, right? I think he used a curse word when he saw her and was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe it!" Like he knew it was not a good debate, and we all saw what we saw with our eyes, And I want to be very clear, we never tried to deny that with the American public. We were like, yep, this was a bad debate. This was not the debate that we had hoped for.
But more than bad, maybe that's the question, is much more than bad, catastrophic, disastrous.
And look, I'm not taking away any of those words of how people saw it. I think, and you were saying this with your question, I think what I want to be clear about is this is someone that I saw every single day. Right? This is someone that I interacted with. I'm talking about President Biden, obviously, every single day. And so when I was going into the briefing room and they were asking me about his mental acuity, it was not something, or a decline, it was not something that I honestly saw. Was he aging? Absolutely. We all get old.
Sure.
Absolutely. And yes. And he was 81, right? And we never denied that. Did I ever question his mental acuity? No.
Did others around you?
No, not that
Inside the White House?
No, not that I was around.
But after the debate, many people question.
Many people question. This is someone, and I say this in what I saw in the truth that I saw, which is this is someone who understands policy. This is someone, and I'm talking about President Biden, obviously, understood policy, understood history, and would also debate you. Right? This was somebody that I would have a debate about what was in the news, what was happening. And so he was more than fit to be president and to the job.
But then he started mixing words and numbers, millionaires for billionaires. And you say that he had a cold. I mean, does that explain that?
I mean, we were all shocked. We were all shocked. Nobody was expecting that. So from what I understand and what I saw is this is not the person that I know. It's not. Remember, I saw him every single day. Every single day, I was as White House press secretary. Right. This is somebody that I spoke to and traveled more than 90% of the time with, whether it was domestic and foreign. It was unusual. There was not a pattern here, if that makes sense. There wasn't a pattern. It was very much a one-off. And so that is what I'm responding to someone who saw him on a daily basis and had an opportunity to see him and interact with him. So the debate was unusual. It was an unusual moment in time.
So you don't think there was something wrong with him?
No, I don't. I really do not. I truly do not.
And on that note, you still believe that he was the right candidate to go against Donald Trump?
So he made, I think, and I say this as well, and I've said this on the podium many, many times, I do believe he was the only person that could make that decision on if he could run or not, right? I think it was up to him, because we have to also go back a little bit to coming out of the 2020 midterm elections. And that early period of 2023, we didn't have a red wave like everybody had reported that was going to happen, and which usually happens in a first midterm of a president. That did not occur. If anything, what we had accomplished and the messagings that Democrats were given helped them not have a red wave. And no one publicly, I know there was this one individual that decided to primary him. None of the leadership made a call privately or publicly to say, you can't run for re-election. They gave him the space to make that decision in 2023 because they believed it was his decision to make.
If I can interrupt, though, but then you have
absolutely
Vice President Kamala Harris with her new book, right, 107 Days, that seems to say something very different, right, which is that she seems to tell us in that book that she herself was hesitant about President Biden's decision to run again. And these are her words, and I'll quote it just so you can react to that, right? Like one of the things that she writes about, and this is her writing about the president's decision to run again, she says, I'm quoting, "It's Joe and Jill's decision. We all said that," she says, like a mantra, as if we'd all been hypnotized. And then she says, "Was it grace or was it reckless? In retrospect, I think it was recklessness. The stakes were simply too high. This wasn't a choice that should have been left to an individual's ego, an individual's ambition. It should have been more than just a personal decision." Those are pretty rough words.
And I've heard those. And look, I respect Vice President Kamala Harris tremendously. I believe that she ran a great campaign. I say this in the book, for 107 Days, as her book is named. And she was a historic figure, historic leadership that she, at that time, that she was able to do. And I think I think we're all allowed to tell her truth and to give her story. I can only give it from my perspective. And again, I go back to 2023 and what we went through and what we saw and how people were feeling about his presidency at the time, because it was successful to all accounts. And this is an objective. This is not me being like, oh, yeah, we had a success. No, the things that we were able to do historically, whether the economy, healthcare, Medicare being able to now be able to go against the pharmaceutical, whatever it was, expanding healthcare for people, veterans, we had a successful, presidency. And so
you won 2020.
And we won 2020. And that's the other
people
point.
didn't get that. You did. You had so many accomplishments, but people did not understand that message.
Yeah. And you're correct. And to your point, he was the only one to have beaten Donald Trump. I mean, those are just facts.
So you think he could have done that again? In other words, you think President Biden would have been a better candidate than Kamala Harris?
Here's what I know. I think that he made a decision for the country, not just for himself. He is someone who, it's hard, right? It's hard when you're an elected official for ego. I mean, right? I mean, they say this about presidents, right? It's hard to not have your ego be playing into this. But this is someone that I understood, who my experience with him, I've known him since 2009, really cared about the country. He's like one of those last of that great generation, really truly cared about the movement, where the country was going, and human beings. And I know that played a part into his decision. That's what I would assume. I was not part of the decision.
You think he would have won?
I don't know.
That he would have been a better candidate than Kamala Harris. That he would have beaten
but that's not what
Trump
I'm saying.
Again.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying the facts led up to you thinking that you understand why he would run again, right? That the facts that were there at the time. I don't know. It's kind of hypothetical. Nobody really knows if he would have won or not. It's a hard thing to say. He made the decision about Kamala Harris. He made the decision to support his vice president, a historic pick that he made, and back her 110% fully when she became the nominee. And I think that's also selfless.
But you also say that you watched the Democratic leadership, and I'm quoting here, abandon and in the end betray Biden.
Yeah, I do. I mean, this is what I was saying before. I truly believe that. In 2023, they were behind him. And I understand he had a however you want to say it, disastrous debate. But again, the other side had their guy, and they came together and understood the assignment, they understood what was at stake for them. Mm-hmm. And I think the way it was handled hurt us in the broad sense, for sure. Hurt us in her election. Because remember, they tried to, the Democratic leadership also tried to have a brokered election. There were many who did not want her to be the nominee. What benefit would that
You call out Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, exactly. She was very vocal about it. She didn't hide
Clooney,
it.
No? Was that the breaking point when he published that column very critical in the New York
When I mentioned
Times?
George Clooney's article, it's more of, oh my God, like here it is. Mm. It was more of like, oh my goodness.
Because they were seeing something that you maybe didn't see?
I saw him every day.
Yeah.
Every single day, practically during the last 2.5 years, at least in my position, and almost every day for the 4 years. I am someone who saw him every day. I am not saying that he did not age. I'm not saying that. That is clear. I'm talking about his mental acuity and awareness and able to do the job at a high level. We're talking about the presidency. And he was able to do that from my perspective, what I saw every day. And that is what I'm talking about. And I do think that the Democratic leadership also tried to damage her. I do. I mean, they were pretty vocal about it. Mm-hmm. And I think his support for her and the community, the African-American community, the Democratic base, were women, Black women in particular, were like, no, we're not going to allow that to happen. And they showed up for her. And I think that's really important to note, too, as we think about the process.
So I think the question then is, did the Democratic Party let the nation down?
I think that when you have millions of voters staying home and thinking that this election, it's not important enough it's not important enough for me to go out and vote, and they voted in 2020, I think that's a question that has to be asked.
What do you think?
I think yes. I think that there was a mishap, right? I think there was something that we didn't see. And again, I take responsibility. I have to take my responsibility too. I was at the podium. I was working for
the face of this administration.
I was the face, right? But more so what I'm talking about now in the book is about the moment that we are in and how do we move forward in the future, right? I write the book. I use that 3 weeks and the election to kind of tell the story, if you will, to a broader place that we're in right now in this moment. It really is a way to be futuristic and moving forward. But I use my story and what happened in order to talk about being an independent, in order to talk about how do we fix this?
And
how do we have this conversation?
To be very clear-eyed about the past, because that's the only thing that informs the present. So I think
I
this
totally agree.
It's a good exercise.
It's an exercise, exactly.
Take us to the podium, though. I think maybe because I think a lot of people don't really understand what it feels like to be behind a podium every single day.
Yeah.
So you, page 2, you say, being the first Black person, immigrant, and openly queer woman to be spokesperson for the President of the United States was a historic role and tremendous honor. But, you continue, but it also meant I spent 4 years speaking for someone else. I had to hold my tongue.
Yeah.
So what is it that you didn't say?
Oh, well, I think...
Or you couldn't say?
No, well, here's the thing. And what I mean by that, just for clarity, is when you're representing someone, you're representing their voice. I wasn't the press secretary for Karine Jean-Pierre. I was the press secretary for Joe Biden. And so I had to represent him in how he would want me to speak to the American people or to reporters, and how he would like me to represent myself. So... And when in that quote, there are two sides to that too, which is as a person of color, a Black person, there's so many stereotypes about us. You have to be really mindful of those stereotypes, right? The angry Black woman stereotype.
You felt that?
Oh, I felt it. You
think the media was treating you differently because you were a Black queer woman?
I mean, I'm not going to go that far. What I'm going to say is I looked different than anybody else who stood at that lectern on that podium. And so therefore, there are stereotypes that live in people's heads that you are responsible for breaking. And also not lifting up those stereotypes. So that certainly was part of my thinking. And I was speaking for someone else, right? So I couldn't, holding my tongue is if I couldn't curse out a Republican.
Yeah, but you couldn't say your opinions as you are now
say my
doing that in the book.
I couldn't say my opinions because it's not about me, right? I mean, it's just not. You worked for a network, Univision. You had to be
true.
right. You had to be mindful on
Of course.
how you represented because you were. We all know that you're a force of nature, but you also had to be mindful about the network that you were working for, right? And I think
I can attest you both seem, as the audience, you both seem way looser now.
But do you think that
don't you feel like you have a little bit more freedom after 40 years?
I have complete freedom now,
See?
yeah. As an independent journalist,
Exactly. We were just talking about independent journalism. Now you are able probably to put your opinions a little bit more than you had before.
Absolutely.
So you
couldn't have said what you're saying in the book before, obviously.
But I couldn't, right?
Yeah.
Again, it's not me. And here's the thing. Being White House press secretary for Joe Biden was an honor and a privilege of a lifetime. I don't think I would have had that experience or opportunity with anybody else because being White House press secretary is a personal decision that the president makes on who they want to represent them. So I'm completely honored and privileged to have had that. Now, it comes with an understanding. You are in a box. And one last thing I'll say, and I know you have more questions for me, is in my private life as White House press secretary, I was always White House press secretary. Does that make sense? Like when I would go to the coffee shop or go to the supermarket.
You were representing someone else.
People weren't just like, oh, you're... You
can never turn it off. You were always...
Exactly. You don't turn it off.
Was that hard?
It's hard. It's hard. I mean, I was
and I know you were also dealing... Your mom was sick.
My mom was sick. I have a little kid.
A kid.
And so what it forced me to do, at least for me, was I really limited people who had access to me. And I limited, I was in a box, if you think about it.
Were you also in a box inside the White House? I mean, because one of the things that you described is kind of some feelings of resentment even within some of your colleagues.
It's disappointment. I would say more of disappointment. So, look, a friend of mine said this to me. There are two jobs that people kill for, right? Which is like the person who is the personal assistant, like the body person of the president, and the White House press secretary. Like
it's
those
like the hottest job in DC.
Right. Everybody wants those jobs. It's the hottest job. So I'm not unusual, right? Where people were constantly trying to go after my job. That happens, I think, to every former White House press secretary. I think it's a hot job. People want it. The way that they went about it was disappointing, right? The cruelty behind it.
You mean your colleagues within the White House?
Within the White House, right?
Really? Were they attacking you within the White House?
It was in the press, right? There were sources from senior Biden official leaks about me, about, oh my gosh, she can't do whatever it was, right? And, it was also, they leaned into me being a first. They leaned into me as the communities that I represented. It was cruel. It was mean. And I, again, had to hold my tongue as you were asking me that question.
Well, why hold your tongue in that moment?
Because now that's more personal than anything else, because I didn't want to play the game. That's just more who I am as a person. I'm not going to play the game. So, okay, I go after you. In the press, you come after me. It becomes a really ugly, nasty game. And there was too much at stake. I had to focus on the job at hand. And it's just not who I am, just fundamentally who I am. Even when the book was announced and things that were being said, I kept quiet. I'm only starting to do interviews now because the book is coming out. But I'm like, I don't have to say anything until I want to say something.
Can I ask you about process? How do you handle tough questions? I was telling Paola that there's just a few people in the country that have faced more difficult questions than you.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I mean, look, I had a great team that worked for me and prepared me every day at the podium.
Hours of preparation?
Oh, 4 hours, at least 4 hours of preparation. Before the press conference, a press briefing, to be more specific. And so that mattered, like really being ready. And we always had a sense, right? We always had a sense of what reporters were thinking, what was on their minds, what they wanted to ask us. So we it's not like I went into the briefing completely blind, right? I knew, we always had a sense of what was coming at me.
Attitude.
It was basically never let them see you sweat. right? Never let them get under your skin, right? And that is the name of the game, right? There's always it's a game, right? You're going back and forth. It's a volley, and it's a gotcha.
Yeah.
Their job is to do the gotchas. Oh, we're going to get her. We're going to get her. Or whoever is at the podium. And it's not just me, but it's whoever is at the podium.
A lot of block and circle.
Yeah.
Block and circle.
You know because you've been on the other side.
Right.
Yeah.
You exactly. You know when you've interviewed presidents and candidates and
you
others.
wait for the weakness, for the moment, for the pause, and then you attack.
You attack, right? Yeah.
And you're on the other side.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking.
Exactly.
It's so interesting.
It's like they if they and you know this, all right. If you sense blood,
oh yeah, you go for it. You go for it immediately.
You pounce, right? And you are a good reporter if you just don't let up.
Mm-hmm.
So you won at the end. You think? No. I'm asking after so many. I don't know how many press briefings, but after you think you won.
I survived.
All right.
How about that? I think I survived.
That's real.
And I think the funny part to me is for those who were saying, oh, even the president doesn't want her as press secretary, or who were saying, oh, she's so whatever they were saying.
They were
about
saying
me.
so many things about
really
you
horrible.
that you were not prepared.
I was not prepared, which is not true.
It.
Yeah. I outlasted some of those people who went after me, right? I outlasted them. The president made me a senior advisor a year ago. He made me a senior advisor. You don't make people senior advisors because you want them to go. You make them senior advisors because I appreciate you so much and I don't want you to go that I'm going to give you an additional title as senior advisor. So I feel that I more than survived. I proved them wrong.
Yeah.
And, that's not the point of this tour, right? I'm not like, that truly isn't. The point of the tour, the point of the book and the book tour is to really focus in and zero in the moment that we are in right now, because I am scared. I am worried.
What scares you the most right now?
I mean, look, you turn on the TV and you hear about someone from someone's family is missing and they don't know where they are. Children being taken away.
You mean raids?
Raids happening everywhere across the country.
Masked man.
That's scary. And if you're not paying attention to that, then you're not paying attention to what's happening in this country. And that's even more scary. And I always believe, and I say this, and I'm not like a brilliant person to say this, if they come after one, they come after all. That is how a democracy fails. That is how authoritarianism goes. It is chaos. It is going after people and making people fearful. And that's what they're doing. This is about a fear.
You
and
think
that is
democracy
where we
is
are.
under attack right now?
Oh, 1,000%. Some people smarter than me would say, historians would say, we are in a authoritarian regime in this moment. It certainly feels that way. Yeah. When you are the most powerful person in the world, certainly in this country, and you are sending military to cities and, making up reasons to send them to cities so that they can do raids, so that they can pull people over, so that they can take people just randomly from the street. What is that? What is that?
Well, I think you're taking the conversation there because I think the pretext for so much of what we're seeing now begins in that 2024 campaign trail when I think Republicans really weaponize the immigration border crisis talking points, right? When they really paint President Biden as, someone that was unable to control the borders and therefore, in their words, allow all these criminals and gang members. But I think that's kind of the foundation of everything that we're seeing now, that rhetoric. Yeah. And so do you feel that Democrats lost the immigration debate? Did they lose this election because of immigration?
So I think there are many reasons why they lost. I think to hold it on one thing is probably, I think it was a variant
that was
of
just
things.
Such a big part of his win.
It was a huge message. Look, we tried really, really hard, as you know, even to come up with a piece of legislation that all sides would agree on, just to get the conversation going on immigration. Republicans held it up in the Senate. And they weaponized it, like you said. And it became a very ugly, disgusting rhetoric. And it's a fear. Again, connecting the fear mongering of a group, of a citizenship, of a group or migrants. And it's disgusting. I felt it personally. Ohio, right? Springfield, Ohio. Yeah. Haitians are eating dogs and cats. That is not true. And they used that, they weaponized why? To scare the people in Ohio, in Springfield, Ohio. And many people said, even the mayor said, oh no, these migrants are actually, they're actually helping with the economy. They're actually good, they're doing good work. We appreciate that they're there. But the leadership of the Republican Party weaponized that. But we're seeing that across the board.
But what did Democrats do, though?
I think, and this is why I think I also have to take accountability. Our messaging, they stole the messaging, right? They made us look like we were the bad guys and also used the community to fear-mongering. So we did not have the messaging. We did not own the messaging, right? The economy. I mean, you can talk about a lot of things where the economy was better. It was getting better. Now, obviously, we were coming from COVID 2020 where things were devastated, but people weren't feeling it. And so...
And the Democratic Party lacked a very clear message. And again,
and I think...
if you ask what do they believe in, it's difficult just to say as you can say for Republicans, for instance.
And that's the whole point of the book, right? That really is. That's what I was hearing. What you're saying to me, Jorge, is what I was hearing from strangers.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Where they're like, okay, but what's our messaging? Why aren't they fighting? What's happening? It's like it's the giving up of power, but they're not powerless. And so I think that is the fear. That is the fear. We don't see them. We don't see the Democratic Party out there fighting. We just don't.
Even right now. I mean, take us to the present. What do you...
Not right now. Look,
what's your take on where they are
right now? There's a shutdown. And I appreciate the Democrats who are fighting this tooth and nail. My heart goes out to federal workers who are suffering in this moment. And that's real. They need their paycheck in order to survive. And you have veterans, you have senior citizens, you have many people who those programs that you need, they're not getting because of this government shutdown. So it is hurting people. But in order for the government to reopen, Republicans have to come to Democrats. They have to work with them.
They're not going to, though.
And so that's the scary part.
The question is, do Democrats have to make concessions?
Look, I think in this moment, they have to do everything that they can to show the public, the people. I think what has been forgotten is that it is not about politics. It's about doing something for people. And they have to show a fight. And you have to hold Republicans accountable and remind, this is the messaging. You got to remind people. Republicans have the House, they have the Senate, and they have the White House. This is on them. And they have to be very clear about that. Maybe they should go to a hospital and do a press conference in front of a hospital that's about to shut down, right? Maybe, I mean, like there are ways, there are things that they can be doing.
But they're not.
They're not.
What would it take for a Democrat to win your vote today?
Oh my gosh. It would take so much more than right now. When you're look, people ask about the trans issue. And when you're throwing a community under the bus for short-term gain, that's a problem to me. Now, civil rights movement, human rights movement, there were things that were not poll tested well. And it should not be about politics. It should be about human rights.
They gave up on immigrants, I think, too. The Democrats,
you cannot give
who's
up on
defending them.
You cannot give up on immigrants, migrants. This is what this country is made of. And those are the things that are problematic to me. One of the reasons I was part of the Democratic Party for so long is the Big Tent Party.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter even if we disagree. In this party, we can disagree and listen to each other. But at the end of the day, we're all protected. And I feel like that's missing. That is missing.
We only have a couple of more minutes. Two more questions. Have you been in touch with President Biden? He was diagnosed, of course, with prostate cancer. How is he doing?
So he called me recently, a couple weeks ago. He called me out of the blue. I should be calling him. He called me out of the blue to check in on me.
Yeah.
Just to check in on me. and to see how I was doing. And, we didn't talk about his diagnosis or anything like that. It was literally him saying thank you to me, checking in on me, and making sure I was okay.
What does he say about your book?
We haven't talked about the book.
He read it? Do you know if he read it?
He will have a copy of the book shortly.
Right.
Okay, well, what do you think his reaction will be?
Look, he is someone who is very distinguished and a lifelong Democrat, and I think believes in the Democratic Party. And so my guess is that he still believes in the Democratic Party and everything that it is and what he has fought for. I mean, he was, a senator, a vice president, a president for more than 50 years. So I think he probably would be like, look, I'm a Democrat. I will always be a Democrat. And I'm like, I hear you. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I hope that he would appreciate that I'm trying to be as honest as I can, and really being in the moment and looking towards the future.
Do you think you'll lose any friends or colleagues because of this book? Does that even matter to you right now?
I'll say, Paola? I'll say this. I have been someone who has been under attack and criticized for a long, long time. This is nothing new. Nothing new. And I do believe truly you have to stand for something or you lose yourself. I have a beautiful 11-year-old daughter, and it matters to me the type of country that we leave her and her peers.
You're fighting for her.
I'm fighting for her. So.
Thanks so much. Oh, by the way,
yes.
How's Caroline living?
Yeah. That's actually...
Everybody asks me about this.
How's she doing?
How do you grade her?
So here's
objectively.
The thing. Look, I'm going to be very honest. I have not watched one of her briefings.
Okay.
I don't watch.
That's how disconnected you are right now.
I am very much paying attention to what's happening to my communities and focused on that and where we are as a country.
She didn't call you to get some tips.
No, I don't think she would have, though. I don't think she would have. And so more other people who are more qualified can speak to that than
Karine,
myself.
thank you so much for talking to us.
Truly.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Gracias.
Thank you. Congratulations to you both. Thank you.
The Moment is a production of Radio Ambulante Studios in partnership with iHeart's My Cultura podcast network.
Our staff includes Daniela Alarcón, Laura Rojas Aponte, Miguel Santiago Colón, Lisa Cerda, with the help from Paola Alián, Diego Corso, Natalia Ramírez, y Elsa Liliana Ulloa. The CEO of Radio Ambulante Studios is Carolina Guerrero.
Executive producers at iHeart are Arlene Santana and Leo Gomez. Pablo Cabrera and Dylan Unger also serve as producers.
If you like The Moment, pero también te gustan podcasts en español, look for Radio Ambulante, historias de toda América Latina, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Sound design, final mix, and theme song by Elias Gonzalez.
I'm Jorge Ramos.
And I'm Paola Ramos.
Thanks for listening.
To The Moment.